The Premier League is back, but there are still transfers to be done. And so in this episode of Sensible Transfers, we're going to identify solutions for a few different clubs that we haven't yet covered. And we're not going to pick those players based on gossip or rumour. Instead, we're going to use the tactics of the team, some data, and some opinion to choose who we think might make some of the other clubs in the Premier League who aren't the top 6 even better. And I'm going to start this by looking at a team who deserved their own video but then made loads of really sensible transfers, which is of course Aston Villa. And as you can see, these are all very sensible transfers. I like all of these, but I'm going to pick one more to make Aston Villa a bit better, because we know the way they play is roughly like a 4-2-3-1 with lots of changes in it. So the fullbacks often go really high and wide. Maybe the right back does that, and then the centre backs become more of a 3. Sometimes it changes to more of like a 4-2-4 shape, so you have the midfielders in here and then the wide players come inside to join this, with the centre mid going next to the striker. There's lots of different variations on it. They have lots of different players, but one of the most important players in Villa's team over the last few seasons has been John McGinn. And John McGinn plays a lot of minutes, but with Champions League football, obviously they're going to play even more games. So how about they bring in someone a bit younger who could possibly challenge McGinn for a place in the first team and maybe elevate the level? And that's why my sensible transfer for them is Alex Baena, who plays for Villarreal. Now, Baena profiles quite similarly to John McGinn. He's not the same sort of player, because nobody is. It's John McGinn. But the important thing to look at is where Baena receives the ball. A lot of his touches are in the attacking penalty area. He can play in the left in midfield. He can play through the middle as well. He can do exactly the same things that John McGinn does in a multi-positional, flexible kind of system. But I think he has a higher potential ceiling. He's already a Spain international. He's really fun to watch. Lots of nutmegs and dribbly bits and pieces. I like him as a player. I know Aston Villa are meant to be linked with him, but that's not why I picked him. He came up for my little search anyway. That's why he's sensible transfer for Aston Villa. Now, the next club I want to look at is Crystal Palace, who play very differently to Aston Villa and of course had a very good end of last season under Oliver Glasner. Now, their system is more of a 3-4-3, but really important positions are these two wing backs. Now, they've obviously lost Michael Olise. They tried to replace him with Ismail Assar, who's more of an outside winger rather than being inside, because a lot of the good stuff they did last season was when Eze and Olise got close together next to Mateta, and they had lots of nice combinations between these three in the final third. But really key to this, whoever plays in this role, it's probably going to be Kamada, is that the wing backs need to provide the width. These guys need to get up and down. And they've got semi-decent wing backs at the moment. They've got Daniel Munoz at right back, and they've got Tyrick Mitchell at left wing back, who is going to be probably the long-term solution there. But if anything happens to Munoz and he's not available, they need someone to back him up. The current option is Nathaniel Klein. He's fine, but he's 33. I think they can do better, and so my sensible transfer pick is a right wing back. And that right wing back is Vanderson, who is a Brazilian, very attacking fullback or wing back, who currently plays for Monaco. He is a lot more attacking than what you currently got. I've got the FBref profiles here, as you can see. He profiles quite similarly to Daniel Munoz, but the important bit is that his progressive passes received and touches in the attacking penalty area are very high, because you'll often find him in very advanced positions. Like this, as you can see. Now, lots of wing backs do this. This is all absolutely fine. But if you look at his data, what we can also see is that Vanderson likes to keep the ball. And when he plays it, he plays lots of progressive passes, quite high scoring for that. But also his tackling, interceptions, and blocks are all reminiscent of what Munoz already does. But importantly, he doesn't clear the ball as much. He keeps it, which will help you play it out of danger when you're trying to, say a team comes at you, rather than clearing it and having to chase, you can keep it and then play through the lines, which will then help exactly how Glasner wants to play at Palace. So that's maybe one area that Crystal Palace could potentially improve in the transfer market. But there's another club, Fulham, who have a clear João Palhinha shaped hole in their entire team. And so we're going to try and find someone who profiles similarly to Palhinha, can give them some of what he brings, and basically play in this exact position in the 4-2-3-1 that Marco Silva likes. And if we look at João Palhinha's FBref profile, what we see is a player who likes to tackle other players. In fact, no other player in the top 5 leagues made more tackles than João Palhinha last season. So that's what we're looking for. Someone who breaks up the play, but then probably what we want is someone who can then help progress it a bit more, which helps us narrow down what we're doing here, because one obvious kind of straightaway sensible transfer that might work for Fulham is bringing in someone else who makes loads of tackles, and that would be Vinicius Souza, who plays for Sheffield United in the Championship, so you think he might want a move. Now, where Palhinha has made the most tackles of any player in the top 5 leagues, Souza has made the 4th most tackles of any player in the top 5 leagues. But when you look at his data, you see that it's missing in other areas. Lots of passing is not great. He doesn't have much vision for me, especially when he gets into the final third, and he doesn't do anywhere near as much in terms of getting into the opposition box as what Palhinha did in the past. So we need someone different. And I've got 2 quite sensible transfers who are probably more of a budget option that someone like Fulham might want to bring in. And the first example I have of this is Ilber Ramadani, who plays for Lecce in Italy. He's an Albanian international. He is someone who likes to break up the play, lots and lots of tackles, as you can see from his profile, but he's a bit more of a carrier of the ball. He might want to try and break forward. He's basically a very neat and tidy, straightforward, ball-winning midfielder, so would fit into here, but probably isn't of the level that takes Fulham forward. He'd be a good squad player, maybe not exactly what they need. We need someone else. And that's why my sensible transfer pick for Fulham is Antonio Blanco. Now, Blanco is 23 years old, lots of room to improve. He's a Real Madrid Academy graduate, but hasn't really played that much. He got his first real full season last season at Alaves. Now, he's a very different profile of player to Palhinha, but there's elements of it that work, particularly if you see his data. He makes lots of tackles, he's in the right place at the right time to intercept, that's what you get. But what Blanco does that they don't currently have is someone who can ping these next level, like worldy passes out to wide areas. His long passing range is brilliant, and he likes to sit in this hole here. So if you were to play next to someone who then has a bit more about them in terms of winning the ball back, what you'd get is that Fulham can sit deep like they do and counter-attack on the wings to get the ball to the box. That's how they play. But you'll have a player who can send these players who are wide away into space to be able to make use of whoever up they have up front and their other players in the centre of the pitch. But there's just one more thing about Blanco. Although he doesn't look like a real ball-winning tackler player from his FBref profile, if you look at the data at Alaves' team last season, he made the second most tackles of any player there. It's very sensible. Next, it's Bournemouth. And you think I'm going to say a replacement for Dominic Solanke, don't you? That's what you think I'm going to do. And I might. But first, I'm going to look at goalkeepers because I think, because John McKenzie told me, that they can probably improve on the goalkeeper position. And we know this based on using our eyes, but also looking at some of the data. Specifically the data that shows underlying numbers, like for example, their expected goals against, 58.1 last season, and their actual goals against is 67, which is obviously a huge underperformance. Why are they letting in so many goals? Is every team shooting amazingly against Bournemouth? Are they just getting really unlucky against every other team? Or is the goalkeeper letting in shots that he probably shouldn't be? Now, when you look at Neto's actual numbers, he's kind of okay. He's letting a couple more goals maybe he should have done last season. The season before, he was roughly in line with where they should have been. But they can improve in that position. And there's a couple of players who are on the market that might be available to come in and raise the level. Now, they've already signed a player called Alex Paulson from New Zealand, who is meant to be the next Peter Schmeichel, according to which internet article that you read. Who knows how good he'll actually be? I don't know enough about goalkeepers. But what I do know is that Aaron Ramsdale, ex of Bournemouth, is probably for sale at Arsenal, and so he'd be able to come in and would make them better straight away. We know that from his numbers and how well he's played. But also, there's another bit of shenanigans in the works, because Liverpool have agreed terms at the time of recording with Georgi Mamardishvili, who is very, 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 very good. But they still have Alisson, so the sensible thing to do would be to play Alisson for the next couple of years, loan out Mamardishvili somewhere like Bournemouth, where he can develop and give them a higher level of goalkeeper while they try and train up Alex Paulson or whoever they want to bring in, and then you've got a much higher level of goalkeeper in your goal, which fixes Bournemouth instantly. Very sensible. But just one more thing, because we haven't talked about Dominic Solanke. Every team only gets one player. I'm going to do two with Bournemouth, sort of. So we know Solanke has gone, they need to replace him with someone who profiles similarly to him, that fits what Andoni Iraola wants his team to do. Now, I have a suggestion, but I'm going to apply it to two teams, both Bournemouth and West Ham, because my player that I want to put in here is Akor Adams, who currently plays for Montpellier in France. Now, Adams is sort of a funny one to pick because although he's similar-ish to Solanke, he also isn't at the same time. What I mean by that is the way he plays looks different to what Solanke does, but the data, when you profile them, they look reasonably similar. One thing that is maybe concerning about Adams is that he undershot his XG by quite a bit last season, which is not great. And he doesn't have the same sort of dialogue with the midfield that Solanke does, but what you do get is someone who can stretch the opposition defence and run in behind if you're counter-attacking. But there's also a problem with this. I'm going to show you what I mean. This is Adams playing up front for Montpellier this season. I like this example of a player that can do this. So the ball is wide here, you see, the ball is played in behind. And the crucial thing you get here is that some players who run the channels will take this ball and go outside that fullback or the centre back and take it wide and the shot's gone. But Adams has a really good touch here, which confuses the defender and gets him through on goal. I love this little touch here. Here's him going, defender's wrong-footed, he gets him behind, and then a smart little finish to poke it past the goalkeeper. This kind of thing is really useful, and the kind of thing that West Ham have had for a long time with Mikel Antonio. Bournemouth could benefit from the way he plays in the box, but I'm basing this off watching him play for a bit of time in Norway. So Norwegian football is maybe a little bit of a hard way to judge him. His goal scoring record is good there. In France, it's not amazing. But the data underlying kind of profiles him Salish Solanke. That's why it's sort of sensible, but not. And it's my segue to West Ham, which is why we're here now. Because what West Ham currently have is Nicholas Füllkrug. They signed him for a bit of money and a long contract from Borussia Dortmund. Really good player, bit more of a static penalty box kind of player. He's not the one, if you want to push the ball forward into space, he's not the one to chase it. As I say, there's certain parts of Adams' data which profiles him similarly to Solanke, but he is more of a player on the counter-attack. And one thing that's relevant more to West Ham than Bournemouth, this is how I segue out of that, is that when Bournemouth counter-attack, they tend to play short passes through the lines. So they're all close together, so if the ball is then dropped and they lose it, they can counter-press, win it back, and they still have possession. West Ham in the past haven't done that. They were in a transition of style to what David Moyes was doing and what Lopetegui will do with them. But what they currently have, as I say, is Nicholas Füllkrug, who's more of a static penalty box player. You can get the ball wide into him, you get the occasional through ball into him, he'll be in the right place at the right time to try and score, but doesn't give you that other option. Their backups are Mikel Antonio and Danny Ings. Danny Ings is still the Danny Ings of old. Antonio has been crucial for them in the past. And I'm not saying Lopetegui won't work instantly at West Ham and it'll go really well, but they have had a habit in the past of changing their preferred style of play in picking their manager. And if they want someone that suits the way they've been playing for a long time, they want someone who can make these runs in behind and cause problems for the defence other than just scoring goals. And that is where Akor Adams makes himself a very sensible transfer for someone like West Ham. And that's all our sensible transfers for this series. I'm tired. If you have more sensible transfer suggestions, please leave them in the comments because it will help for the next one. I can go and check them out. Have a nice time.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. With the latest transfer news and insights on every Premier League story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football and you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.